Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. In this video, we're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into the differences between the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro. Now on the channel, we had a chance to go and talk about this a few weeks ago, but that was also mainly due to the leaks that came out for the PlayStation 5 Pro at the time. Now we have had pretty similar vibes, I would say, of what came out, but the whole idea of this video is, number one, we now have the official releases and official numbers from PlayStation, and as well, there might be a few more people that might be interested now that the actual console itself has been released. So if you kind of have the rough idea or have done your own deep dive, totally okay if you guys go and skip it, but at the same time, there is some kind of intriguing thoughts that I have, at least when it comes to the consoles themselves. I also have been seeing a little extra hate on the PS5 Pro, so I would actually love to see if you guys still kind of think that, or if any of you guys might be a little bit more on the hardcore side, due to the fact that I do a lot of PlayStation videos and console videos on my channel, and if you guys may think differently. I myself, I think there actually is some pretty decent upgrades, and I do think as well there is a niche. If you're a PC user, want to get a console, maybe go PS5 Pro. If you have a PS5, maybe want to do even like things like trading on in, maybe worth it for you long term. And there is like a nice niche if you have no consoles at all, and this is going to be your first one. It's kind of not a bad one to dive on into, so have a very good value and a lot of cool stuff too as well. So let's go talk about the hardware differences, the overall software differences, and like I said, you guys may have seen some of this stuff before, but I do think it's kind of cool, especially things with like the GPU that actually did end up being bigger than expected, and I do kind of think that the console itself is also slightly more different than I would expect to as well. So make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. We have the Twitter and Twitch room down below if you want to follow. Leave your likes and your thoughts down below, and let's go dive on into it. So first and foremost, we've seen a lot of really cool stuff when it comes to the internal specs of the console itself. Things like AI upscaling, more ray tracing, and of course just an overall hyper focus on the better GPU is kind of like the high level. I'm going to give you guys the high level first and kind of go do a little bit more of the deep dive into it. But the idea really is that the console itself is actually bigger. The console itself is actually a generally bigger console, and this is the Last of Us Part 2 gameplay, which is also, I believe, pushing a good solid 60 FPS. That's the big thing to kind of note, and I want to high level explain this, is that the PS5 Pro will be able to run 8K 30 FPS. So if at some point throughout the next few years, kind of future-proofing it, you will be able to utilize an 8K TV. And some of the stuff will be a lot more fine-tuned and showcaseable if you do have an 8K TV or bigger TV. Mainly due to the fact that like you can see these textures and details a lot cleaner on like an 80-inch TV versus like a 27-inch gaming monitor. And of course as well, it is now offering different types of options. There is different types, and we might do a little bit more of a deep dive in this in some separate videos, so obviously subscribe for it. But there is a lot of different types of things, such as them having now multiple new performance modes for you to utilize. So before they had like performance mode, and now they have a brand new mode too that makes it so you don't always have to basically go and choose. Like basically for the PS5, you either go get like 4K 60, or maybe get like 4K and like, you know, like maybe like 1080, but like a way higher frame rate. And the PS5 Pro is basically giving you another secondary middle tier option, which is nice. So the big high level is that the GPU is actually really big. Now, I believe it's now marketed as a 67% increase into the computing power, 45%, which is the big number we saw for the leaks, which actually did end up turning out true, in terms of that for like rendering power, like this overall like console, like improving power. And of course, the GPU itself is also bigger. They also did have a big focus more on ray tracing and also the PSSR, which that's more of a software increase. Now, I will want to say on a comparison to for this brand new GPU as well. We're going to give you guys a proper chart in a second, but the idea behind all of this is that it's a big and comparable console for a PC. And now you may not have you might want to maybe go get a PC instead, but the idea behind this is that the new GPU, which we still need to find more information on from AMD itself, is comparable to like a 4060 Ti, which for a normal like PC price range is around $400 for the GPU itself. And of course as well, like if we want to compare it to the PS5, which we will in more depth in a second, that's pretty good. Like that's a pretty good GPU. So going to that, let's go and talk about more of the specifics. And you guys had a chance to go see it, but right this second, there has been a lot more details on the console. So first and foremost, the GPU itself is boasting 67% more computing units than the original PS5. They also do have the additional ray tracing effects, which ray tracing was available on the PS5, but this is more fine-tuned using AI and other stuff, and AI upscaling too as well via the brand's PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution software. And on top of this too, like I said, they have these different types of like performance versus fidelity decisions when it comes to the games, which makes it a lot more consistent with a 45% better GPU, which really is the biggest part of it. But the one thing is we don't actually know from AMD what the GPU is, just the specs. So basically from that one, they had a chance to go and explain what makes the PS5 Pro different from the PS5 on the official blog. So we're getting using this from the official comments. That's kind of why we're also making this too. It's kind of like the confirmation of some of the leaks, yes, were true. And now we can kind of compare it with the official blog. The new console will feature Game Boost, which can now bring more than 8,500 games, which we'll probably do a separate video on. But that's huge for the PS4. That's huge, just basically using AI and basically having a chance to make old games better, which is, you kind of want to get new games and have a reason to buy a PS5 Pro, but I think it's a good deal. And I think one of the bigger things too is the Wi-Fi 7. Now, that's mainly just saying, like, if you're someone who uses their console, and a lot of people do, and you're not right next to an Ethernet cable. Now, in my mind, I do think that's a big deal. I am right next to an Ethernet cable, my modem box. I have no worries. But a lot of people have their consoles at their bedrooms or in their living rooms where it's not right next to your modem or PC. And that's really good for in like dorms, maybe you're a younger like kid, which I think a lot of probably younger folks usually have a console first, PC later when they have more money. That's a big upgrade. That's kind of nice. The big thing too is also 8K. So the idea behind the PS5 Pro is you can run 8K 30 FPS, and they used to have that on the PlayStation boxes. A few months ago, they removed it off the box, probably in likeliness to the PS5 Pro coming out very soon, and that's kind of a big deal for it. So now to kind of get more in the nitty-gritty of what's going on with it. So let's talk about this. The big idea is that the CPU is the same, and this kind of makes me a little bit sad. So it is an AMD Ryzen Zen 2 with the 8 cores, 16 threads, but you can overclock on the PS5 Pro, due to the fact that the overall console is bigger, but also better. Like the GPU itself can take some load off the CPU, so you will be able to go overclock the CPU, and it does make the stats better. As well, there's, I believe, also not listed here, a better APU, like the overall processing unit for the console itself, which also then makes everything else a little bit more efficient. Then the same thing for the GPU. We're waiting for AMD to give more details. But the card itself is actually way bigger, which is why the console is also bigger. This is kind of like some new information, at least thrown in here, or the dimensions for this are way different. So have the best comparison on this one is that the height of the console for the PS5 Pro is the same size as the original day one PS5. That's the one I have. And then the width is basically the same size as the current PS5 Slim. So it's technically a taller console in comparison to the mainstay PS5 Slim that you can buy right now, but also then around the same size-wise, like in the width-wise. So it is a slightly bigger console overall. If you guys saw my video last night, we made a video discussing that. And same thing too as well with like the PSSR, which is a big proper detail that the other console doesn't have, which is go check out the video on the channel if you want. Basically, that's just utilizing AI to fill in the blanks and using machine learning to make sure all the old school games run a lot better. It's kind of what I kind of showcased over here on some of the videos where they had a chance to go and kind of just mention like just some of like the background details looking a lot nicer, basically using AI in the background to make them seem crystal clear, such as like say the foliage on the ground itself and making the shadows and textures look a lot nicer. So the GPU, we don't know exactly what it is. It's undisclosed. Hopefully AMD will talk about it, but it will technically be the comparison to a 4060 Ti, around a $400 GPU, which also kind of bodes the value for the PS5 up a little bit more. Some people are skeptical, myself included, and I do think it's a bit on the greedy side, but I do think the PlayStation overall, that's a big update. Now the RAM is the same. RAM apparently is still the 16 gigabytes of DDR6 at 448 gigabytes read speed. But the storage, mainly due to the fact that the console is a digital-only console, which is also contrarian, is at a 2 terabyte SSD. Similar, probably the same SSD, just bigger, which I do appreciate, because if you're spending more money versus $500, I would expect something better, especially if it's not pure disc or digital. If it is a pure digital console, I want that. They do also have a chance now to push the 8K, so think of more of a consistent 4K 60 FPS, 8K 30, which is now doable. No one ever really did 8K with the PS5. They also do have the Wi-Fi 6 update. Dimensions, as I said, are slightly taller, about the same width. And of course, the price point's a little bit more expensive. Now, the GPU itself is, as I mentioned, 45% better for rendering, which is really nice for ray tracing and all these other various things like the AI, but it's also a bigger thing where I think it has a lot more like bigger cart, which is why the console is bigger. But big notes is that they also probably have a more efficient heat management system, so the console will run a little bit cooler and probably save specs, as well as also a better APU, which as well makes things like the CPU able to be overclocked, because it's just a better, more efficient, like just imagine you have a smarter brain, you can do a little bit more. Like really rough example is kind of how it is. But a big thing too is it also means you'll have a chance to run more vivid and realistic things like reflections on things like in say Gran Turismo. And because it also means you don't have to make as many decisions. So basically you're getting the best bang of your buck. They have things like performance modes and other modes with the PS5 Pro. You have more options. You have one more option to select, but at the same time, you're most likely going to pick it because it utilizes the extra GPU power and then can run at higher fidelity levels while maintaining that still 60 FPS frame rate. So basically saying a 4K 60 from the PS5 to 4K 60 PS5 Pro will mean you'll have better overall quality and less issues. You don't have to worry about maybe running on a performance mode too as well. And there also are bringing up the AI upscaling too, which is very nice, and they don't have that for the PS5. So they've even kind of shown examples, say for like the AI upscaling and kind of filling up the backgrounds and background details and like things like the houses and stuff like that for their consoles. Now we still want to wait and see what kind of AMD does for the CPU. It does seem like based on all their writings, they're making the assumptions the same old CPU, which was based on the initial leaks, but the GPU, at least size-wise, is different and of course all around nicer. So we've kind of had a lot of the spot-on leaks before, but it's nice to kind of see the official confirmation from Sony. So I want to hear your thoughts and comments on everything down below. I appreciate yourself very much for watching, and I want to hear your thoughts if you still think it's good or not. I think the PS5 is getting a little extra hate than they probably should, and I kind of still want to get one myself.